It's real. It's real. You know the deal. You know the deal. Come on.
Hey, it's Shanté.
And I'm Natalie. And welcome to What's the Deal, a podcast powered by the Norfus Firm. At the Norfus Firm, we solve people problems and have the great pleasure of working with employers all around the world on HR and DEI initiatives.
And so many other things.
And
Workplace conflict, which is going to be really relevant.
Today.
Internal investigations, also relevant.
Yes.
So yeah, we do a lot of things here at the Norfus Firm.
Hi, friend.
Hi.
We haven't been here in a while.
We haven't. We took the summer off, or
We did
part of
take-
the summer off, which was nice.
Yes.
Did some really cool stuff this summer, which is some nice traveling. Saw a couple of cool places. If you all follow us on Instagram, I'm sure you saw London and Croatia pics. Where else? That was the main thing, right?
Those were the main things,
Okay.
but that was a lot.
That was a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm allergic to London, by the way, everyone.
Oh, God.
Been there
I
twice
forgot
this
about
year
this.
and broke out in hives both times. I'll put up pictures so you can see what happened.
I have different theories just because I don't want her to think she's allergic,
I'm allergic
to a whole city.
to London.
But definitely London tried to take you out
London
twice.
tried to take me out. Oh my gosh, in so many ways. Not even just the allergic reaction to the environment.
Your knee.
My knee busted up on me and
Your calf
seized
muscle.
up on me. And I had to like fall into a bar and like just sit there.
Fall
I wasn't drinking.
into a bar.
I wasn't drinking, but had to sit there
You
and
did
just
have a
let
glass of wine, though.
afterwards, after my leg relaxed,
Oh,
helped
yeah.
me deal with the trauma of embarrassment.
Bless. But here we are with an unseized up calf muscle.
Knees are feeling pretty good today.
Yeah. No hives.
No hives.
You
No
look
hives.
beautiful.
Thank you. So do you.
Thank you. And I think all of this is relevant to just like how we end up in these places of like, we're holding on by a thread some days. I mean, honest, real talk, right? And then you apply that to what we're talking about. And what comes to mind is the Biggie beef song. You know,
Which one?
the What's Beef?
Oh, yeah, we'll have to play it. We'll have to play it.
We will have to try to find a way to play it. But listen, folks have a lot of beef at work.
People are dealing with a lot. There's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. And folks are, sometimes it comes out. You gotta discharge that energy. And sometimes you gotta just let somebody have it. But we don't encourage that as a side note, but it happens.
Right. And I think the reason why that's relevant and in the spirit of shared language, beef is workplace conflict. Mm-hmm. And Shanté will define workplace conflict, but maybe beef is not a word that everyone uses.
It's definitely a colloquialism.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But for real, in terms of like why we felt we have a few episodes we're going to do on beef at work and how to identify it, what kind of solutions, what kind of questions to ask, which ways to mitigate. But the bottom line, to me, of course we can get to solutioning, is the types of conflict are not only increasing, but becoming so nuanced, right? So like the things that people get upset about at work are surprising sometimes, like meaning as somebody who's done investigations for 20 years, I'm seeing people complain about things that I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? Why is this? And it's people are exasperated when I'm interviewing them during interviews. Mm-hmm. They are at their wits' end. If they could, they'd walk out in that moment. Like a lot of that energy over and over and over. Right. And I think that's what, and we're getting all these calls and emails again, more so than ever. Do you guys facilitate workplace conflict between leaders? We'll have an episode on that too. Yep. But you're like, why is everybody beefing? What is going on?
Yeah, people are upset. They are tired of everyone else's
bullshit.
I was going to say it. I was going to do have them put up the little emojis, the little curse word emojis. But she said it. So, and I'm messing up my mic. But yeah, so it's hard. And I think people are just like, enough is enough. And we got to figure out how to deal with this. So, throughout this series, we're going to cover a couple of different conflicts that we see come up. And so for this one in particular, we're going to focus on more personality type conflicts, but that can be misconstrued, right? So sometimes the question is it a personality thing? You just don't mess with somebody, their energy's messed up, they've got a bad vibe? Or is it more of a racial kind of thing? Is it more based on demographic characteristics, or so what is it? How do you make that distinction and that determination? So this is interesting because it happens so much, and we always default to a certain reason or response. It has to be because I'm this. It has to be because I'm black. It has to be because I'm a woman. It has to be because I'm gay. And it's but is it, or is it just you guys just energetically don't really jive?
Ooh, I can't wait.
Yeah. Shared
language.
Okay, right. So a couple of things that we're going to talk about. You already covered the beef, urban colloquialism, so we got that is just conflict. But two that we also want to introduce here are cultural dynamics. So because that again can contribute to where some of this conflict stems from. So just so we have that language, that shared definition down, it really is the interplay of different cultural backgrounds and identities within a workplace, which can influence behavior, communication styles, and conflict resolution. So it's really about all the things that make up who you are. Everyone's different things and how those dynamics come together and are at play, and what friction can come from that, right? And then the personality clashes are conflicts that arise due to differing personality types, so communication styles or work preferences, rather than external factors such as race and culture. So this is more intrinsic to the person, just who they are, their makeup, their general makeup, and then how that shows up in relation to other people.
And what I appreciate about you having identified these two terms is that what we know scientifically from tools that we use that we'll talk about today, there are things that are just part of your personality, right? Yep. And I think it's important to highlight that early and often, because you could be having conflict with someone because you all share similar personality traits. And sometimes when you're not real self-aware about your own personality traits and they get reflected back to you, that can be ugh.
It's kind of like that dissonance where it's very similar. The folks who deal with music, hear music, there's that thing where it's the frequency is really, really close, but then it does it really weird vibrational thing. Yeah. That's what that reminds me of when people are very similar in their personalities, but it's just maybe slightly off. And you get that really crazy vibration.
And a real talk moment of how Shanté normally calls me out is when I say that I'm irritated about something, and she's like, and you do that too. So the reality is if you find yourself frustrated with something, I would just say an early tip is it something you would do too? Can you be real with yourself? Because we love self-awareness. But the point we're trying to call out here is that sometimes it's just personalities don't gel. Or you have very different personalities, and so that's a problem. Yeah. And then sometimes it is culturally related, people's biases, people's stereotypes. And again, the reason to call that out is that people do often rush to assumption about intent. And that I see every day that I do investigations. The way people piece together stories off of scraps of information and then start plugging in, well, it has to be that. I mean, it's every day. Yeah. Just this week, I was interviewing someone who was claiming that her boss was creating a hostile work environment. And unfortunately, that term has become a catchphrase, but it actually has a legal meaning. And most often when people are using it, it's not within that context. But I got called to investigate because of the allegation of a hostile work environment. And so when I was asking one of the complainants, well, what do you think this relates to? Why do you think this is happening? Well, initially I thought it was because of my color, but there's a lot of us here, so I'm not sure. Right? So it was a default to, couldn't possibly be that I'm not doing the job the way I'm being asked to do it. Right. It couldn't possibly be that I used a tone that wasn't received well. It couldn't possibly be all the other things that are possible. Right. The initial instinct is it's got to be because of my color. And you hear that a lot, and I think this is a little bit of a soapbox moment, but I do think that because of the way our country is set up and it's so easy to sue people, we really have gotten away from personal accountability, which is a part of this whole conflict thing, is that if you're coming at it, it's that person, it's not me. Right. It's this just default to not even being accountable for how you show up sometimes.
Yeah, that's an important call out, because people like to go into victimhood. And again, listen, let's be really, really clear here, because I can already hear folks saying something crazy about how they anti this or don't like this or that, or they're saying, no. Sometimes it is based on a characteristic, right? Like you said, biases show up, and in general, this person does not like these types of people. That is definitely a thing. And also, sometimes these conflicts happen because two people can't see themselves. So they're just reacting to whatever they think this other person is projecting, and they're not seeing how their reaction to that is also stirring all of this up.
Yeah, because I can give you examples also from this week, because I feel like every time I'm talking to you, you're like, more interviews?
Golly.
What is going on? But similarly this week, I am dealing with a very inexperienced head of HR, lots of energy, wants to get things done, really rough around the edges, talks to people a little greasy. And then the first thing that comes out of her mouth, well, I'm not a micromanager, which is exactly what she is when you look at the communications, right? So it's that piece of this always, there is no way you can get away from yourself. Right. There is no way you can get away from yourself. First of all, you are the person you spend the most time with in your lifetime. But also, like, if you start every kind of crunchy conversation with what the other person's doing wrong, there's always going to be conflict.
Yeah, always. Always. You got I mean, and maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but there always has to be a point in which you always, I know we don't like those big always, should, could, anyway, but there should,
she's on fire, guys.
You would want to sit with yourself and reflect and say, okay, so what part of this is me? What part of this is what am I, how am I contributing to this in any way, shape, or form? Because again, it takes two to tango, right? Nothing happens just, some things, yes, you are a victim of things, but this is, what we're talking about is not that, right?
No, and this is something we are sometimes disciplined to a fault on, but we, after each aspect of a project, not even just after a whole project, after each milestone of a project, we stop and we look back at, is there anything that we could have done better differently? When we're running into situations, which happens everywhere, right? If we're running into situations where we feel like our clients are not quite following what we're asking of them, or they're not necessarily getting back to us as quickly as they promised, or we don't have all the information we need to move forward, right? Instead of just instantly saying, oh my God, our clients are so annoying, oh my God, could we have done something to avoid being here? Is there something that we missed in the communication? Is there right? Because at the end of the day, you want to be clear about everything you have a sphere of influence over, is how I feel about it, right?
Yep.
You have an influence on how you respond or react.
Correct.
You have an influence on the words you use.
Correct.
You know, if you know what your KPIs, your targets are for something, you have some idea of how you can do them. And so the first piece is like, have I done my part here? Am I contributing to the possibility of conflict, or, you know, am I figuring out a way to diffuse or mitigate it? And so I when we're saying this, we just can't overemphasize how often, whether it be through investigations, which is what I see all the time, every day, whether it be through the frequent facilitations that we do, it is stunning how sort of the number one thing always comes back to someone not seeing themselves in that conflict. How long it can take us to like unravel someone pointing the finger and just saying and seeing themselves, right?
Right. And it's important because you want to make sure, using this language again, anyway, you all get it. I think it's important to really be able to discern what's really going on. So unless you go through that process of trying to figure out, okay, what role did I play in this? What's actually happening here? What are the facts? So that you can definitively get to, okay, yep, nope, it's a race thing. Or nope, it's a gender thing. Or nope, it's this. If you've gone through that exercise, you just defaulting to, you know, it has to be that. It's like, we may skip some steps here, or maybe missing some information. So
you just put out there the facts piece, which, you know, we love facts. We love facts. What role do facts play in being able to understand what kind of conflict we're dealing with, and how are you identifying some of that?
Yeah, the facts are really about kind of removing the emotion out of things. And getting down to what was actually said, what was actually done, right? Like, what are the for the most part tangible things that you can point to say this is without, but you know, as objectively as you possibly can, right? So I think we're subjective beings, that happens. But as objectively as you can you just pinpoint exactly what it is and then go through and, again, without the charge on it, just look at it, right? What happened here? And then maybe add in a filter on that says, okay, now based on that, just these set of facts, we ended up here. How did we end up here? What happened? Like, what was the other things that then took part here or played into this to get us here? And so you really kind of have to peel back the layers of the onion to get down to the center of it, which is, this is what was said, this is what was done. Right?
And what facts don't I have?
Correct.
So,
what's missing?
like, just because, like, honestly, this drives me crazy. And I know you too, because we're big on the 4 agreements with Don Miguel Ruiz. If you haven't read that, it's so important, because one of the agreements you would want to make with yourself in life is don't make assumptions. So ask for what you need. And so it's amazing how in this there's 2 complainants in this one where race might be involved. And so when I'm trying to work through whether there was a hostile work environment, I'm asking questions. Did he raise his voice at you? No. Did he call you names? No, but he did call me a liar. Oh, okay. So tell me about that. And then she walks through some interpersonal conflict issue that she had with someone else. The boss went out to investigate it, asked her what happened. She said, I didn't yell at her. I didn't put my finger in her face. I didn't do that. He went and talked to other people. And from whatever he learned, he found that the other people were more credible than her. So he comes back to her saying, yes, you did yell at people. Yes, you did put your finger. Multiple people said that, saw it. She took that as he was calling her a liar. Now, when she finishes the story, I'm like, I didn't hear when he called her a liar, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. Like, I didn't catch when him calling you a liar came up. She's like, oh, well, he didn't say that. He said, he asked me what happened. I told him that didn't happen. And he came back and told me that it did happen. So I said in my head, I didn't even say to him that he's calling me a liar. And I'm like, wow. Okay. Like, I don't even know what to do with that, because it's like compounded assumptions.
Yes. And then, of course, it's like, right. So, of course, you're going to act this way if someone calls you a liar. Yeah. So some of this stuff is justified if that is what actually happened.
But you're saying he didn't even call you.
Happen. So
you're saying he did, but he didn't.
What? Which one is it?
He didn't.
Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of identifying, again, we have personality. If we just frame up, what would be a personality clash example, and what would be its more race-driven example?
So,
or any other demographic. We're just using race as a proxy for demographics, by the way.
So I think personality is kind of like how, just who people are in terms of how they show up. So for instance, we have one person that we know of who is more, a little informal and will go through and she will, in her communication style, right? Like, she's just a little bit more formal, but then we have another person that we work with who is a little bit more formal, right? And so that it can rub each other, why, her speaking this way is it's too uptight, one, or the other ones be like, I feel like she's too lax, like she's too familiar, right? Like, it could be that kind of thing. And that can rub someone the wrong way. And then based on that, like those communication styles, now they're just like, I don't even like talking to this person or dealing with this person. I'm not saying that that's happening, but that's where it can go, is that they just don't eventually want to deal with each other because they get triggered, or they get irked or annoyed every time because of how they communicate with one another. So that's an example of like just a personality thing. I think what happens with that is that if you notice that happens and you kind of take a look at how that's showing up across different people, like for instance, what we hear all the time is, especially from Black women, is that, the way we speak can be seen as a threat, or we're attacking someone. Specifically, we hear this a lot in white women, Black women dynamics, right? Like we get the feedback often that white women feel attacked when Black women, for the most part, we just speak very directly. Like, we're going to tell you what it is. She knows personally.
I am over it.
Because it's happened to her.
Regularly.
So that's the thing. But the point there is that you got to look at the larger picture there? And is it just that one-on-one, or is it more of a cultural type thing? And then so what's at play? Again, looking at the facts, what's at play, and then you can make the determinations based on that. So
yeah, and some of the ways that you can sort of start to get clues that it might be based on some kind of demographic are some of those trigger words, right? For whatever reason, lately, people, again, I think folks are tired, so you try to give the grace, right? But I'm regularly asking people questions, right? So you have to think about how to ask the question depending on who you're talking to, right? And I have to learn pretty quickly when I'm talking to someone, is this someone who's just going to be really like answer the question directly and move through and we can just boom, boom, boom? Is this someone who's going to give me, if I ask, your data hire, a whole history of how they were hired and you have to deal with that a certain way? Is there someone I'm going to ask the data hire and they're going to tell me about what happened last week instead of answering that, right? So those are the things I have to kind of figure out pretty quickly. And I've run into a lot of situations lately where I'm investigating workplace conflict between white women and black women. And I am a black woman, in case people did not know that. And so when I'm interviewing white women and a question gets uncomfortable, they want to answer a different question, right? So I might be saying, so did that happen on Monday or Tuesday? Oh, did you know that red is my favorite color, right? Like that kind of evasiveness.
Right.
And so then I'll say, I need you to answer my question. That's not what I'm asking.
Right.
And then I'm like, I need you to pause.
Yeah.
And hear what I'm saying. And that's exactly how I say it.
Right.
And then it'll be like, I feel like I'm being attacked. And it's such a charged word because attacked gets thrown out there.
It's weaponized.
Yeah. So can
against
you talk
us,
about that?
Right? Like,
Well, why is attacked itself a word that's weaponized?
because it shifts the focus away from whatever's happening, and it automatically centers that person, and in a way that can be damaging to the person who's actually just trying to have a conversation or be direct. And so it's like automatically you're put at odds, and societally, like through history, you tend to center the person's perspective. Normally in these instances, it's white women who are saying this, and they get centered, and it's a diversion tactic. Like you get to not deal with the thing that's actually happening, the facts, again, not dealing with that, but now we have to deal with her and her feelings and being attacked. And it's like, but that's not what's happening.
Because again, that's not a term that was one of our shared language terms, but attack is not someone saying, I need you to answer the question I'm asking.
No.
Right? Like it's if you even just kind of look at the context in which we're raising this now, these are investigations where 95% of the time I'm interviewing someone I've never met.
Right.
Right. So like if within literally this can happen within like 7-8 minutes of speaking and going back and forth and someone not answering a question, it's like, how could I attack you? I don't know you. I've never met you before today. I don't have any judgment of who you are as a person. I'm not yelling. I'm not threatening you. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not threatening to come to your house and knock you in your head. Mm-hmm. I'm not threatening to get you fired. Mm-mm. I'm not doing anything that makes your personhood. You're on a screen. Mm-hmm. I'm not we're not even in a physical room together. I'm not in your face. Like I'm not showing any body language that I'm going to do anything to you. Like these are all transcribed. It's all very straightforward. Right. Where we know I could have an attitude like that. I'm never going to deny. I could have an attitude, y'all. We know that. Yeah. I am very self-aware. But when I'm coming in to do my job.
And your job, it's your job.
With people I don't know,
yes,
like
exactly.
I don't have any reason to attack you.
And you're coming in there from an unbiased perspective. Like you can't have sides. You can't have, like you're just trying to assess what's happening or what has happened here. So those little nuances that come up. Mm-hmm. Some of the other things that we've seen that are indicators of a conflict maybe having some bias undertone, men who cut women off a lot in meetings without sort of acknowledging, doing that. Mm-hmm. That we've talked about this in the past, but, things that happen when you're not talking about work. So like if someone's eating in a lunchroom and you're unfamiliar with their food mm-hmm. and they're eating food from a different country and you make a negative comment about their food and maybe they don't address it then, but then, it finds its way, mm-hmm. into work issues. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh, religion. Someone's fasting during Ramadan and so it's if you're calling out something that's different about someone than you, at any particular point,
that can lead to the other person thinking, oh, it must be race related because she said something about my hair, she said something about the food, she said something about, or he's constantly cutting me off. He's always asking me to take the notes, right, to do the woman stuff. So those are the things that are some ways in which it might say conflict between people relates to some demographic they have that they can't change or can't change easily.
Right.
So once you've identified the conflict, who's got roles in what?
What do you mean who's got roles in what?
What do we do about it?
Oh, well. So it depends. I mean, if folks are self-aware enough to and emotionally mature enough to be able to really, hey, this happened, want to clear the air, let's talk about it, let's really get through, this is what I heard, this is how I responded. Like if you can have that kind of mature conversation, great. That doesn't happen very often because, again, people get caught up in their feelings and which is normal. But that block, it's a barrier. It's a block to be able to have those kinds of conversations. So if you can't resolve that amongst yourselves, then you got to get your resources and your tools. So it could be facilitation, or it could be a tool that we use, a software that allows folks to really get behavioral insights, called Cloverleaf, and it helps us just really understand, okay, the person outside of the casing, so to speak. So get to the inner of who they are and get some insights on what could possibly be contributing to this issue here. And so I think you can go, Natalie loves Cloverleaf, she uses it a lot. You can go into detail about what that is and how it is applied.
Before I do that, though, I would really like to just call out two things you just said because I think they're great.
Yeah.
Number one is try to solve the conflict amongst yourselves.
Please.
I mean, it would be amazing if folks could just step back and say, this is my job. We have stuff to get through. I'm having some hiccups with this person. Let me talk to that person. It would be amazing because actually, if you can go to, I'm sure
both
Shanté's
today,
like, get out of the mic. But if you're able to say to the person, like you just said, hey, this didn't go over well. I don't want to make assumptions. This is how I received it. You have a greater chance of preventing the conflict in the long term with that person because you all have taken up the time together to try to understand it. And then you start to understand each other. So I just really I appreciate you raising that. The second thing of what you said, I think that's important, is just to be ultra clear. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you want to go to HR, you want to go to the supervisor of all of you or the manager of all of you, for sure. Like, don't let it fester. I mean, I think the biggest point of what we're saying is don't let it fester. So whichever way you feel comfortable doing it, do it, but do it. Right. Because that's the other thing that I think is just underlying a lot of this, is that if you don't nip it,
it's just going to grow. It's going to get worse. It's cancer. At that point,
it is, and in ways where you're like, oh, wow, okay,
in ways that have people calling you
exactly. So Cloverleaf. So the third option that you were giving around tool usage is Cloverleaf. And I do love Cloverleaf because a lot of us, and this gets at the personality piece, because this gets at why do we know people have different personalities outside of your lived experience and seeing some people are quiet, some people are loud, some people are this. We have tools, we have assessments. So Cloverleaf is like this coaching tool that puts together all these different types of assessments that many of us has taken at least once, like Clifton Strengths, Myers-Briggs, DISC. And instead of just telling you what your profile is, which I think we all love on some level, especially if you like astrology, because it's like, oh, that is me. I am that way. It also, sorry, I lost my way for a second, guys. It happens. Where are the words?
The words this week. It's been really hard to just find these words. Yesterday, I was
fumbling
all through
really smart, and I just got very lost.
Anyway, we're back.
Yes. So Cloverleaf obviously will take those assessments, which many of us have taken, but they take it a step further.
Yeah.
And giving you a tip about yourself every day helps with self-awareness and gives you tips about people on your team. And so through that, we can see where people who don't get along, and sometimes people who felt like it's race-related, have the exact same profile, right? So there's personality traits that are exactly the same, which again could be a rub. Similar personality traits can also lead to groupthink, which is why this tool is cool too, to avoid that, but that's a different issue. And so when you have a tool like that, where every day you're getting brief little tips any day of the week, you can go in and say, okay, I'm having a challenging situation with Shanté. How can I talk to her about something difficult? And the tool will give you a tip, right? So it allows for the de-escalation of that charge.
Right.
And then we're just looking at the facts.
That's it. And it helps to have some insight, again, to your point of knowing how to talk to people. Because a lot of it is not even necessarily what you say, but how you say it.
Yeah.
And tone will get you punched in the face. So,
Listen.
you just got to watch. And it helps to okay, so what words should I put together and how should I put them together so that I don't get punched in the face, I think is the real takeaway.
Shanté regularly says, watch your tone. Not to me, fortunately, because I don't talk to her greasy.
She's
but the reality is that. So I think if we're thinking about this sort of anchoring. Oh,
and I just want to say we are not sponsored by Cloverleaf. We love them, but they have not sponsored this episode.
We do love y'all, but yes. So if we sort of put it all together, yes, sometimes the beef is because of race or gender or any other things. A lot of times the beef is because of personality conflict, and a lot of times that beef because of personality conflict comes from us not being self-aware, understanding our role, or even being willing to look at our role. So as we go forward and thinking about this, of what we're sharing today is, think about your role in it. Think about how you might have created miscommunication or not. Most of these conversations don't just come out of clear blue sky where sometimes people have a bad day and they're just rude, but oftentimes this is something building over time between people. In terms of solution, in terms of identification, again, you're going to look for some of the tropes on it being culturally related, and you're going to look for personality differences or similarities on trying to understand what type of conflict it is. And when you're in that situation, what do? If you feel comfortable, and we really encourage you to be brave and courageous here, address the person directly, but being thoughtful of, hey, I felt this way, but I don't want to read into what you meant by that, to give that person the opportunity to sort of to respond. If you're not comfortable, HR, leaders in the organization, and ultimately looking for ways to think outside yourself is, I think, how we wrap this. So thanks for listening. We'll be back with more beef, and follow us everywhere.
Yeah. The internet, the website, social media, Instagram, what's the deal?
Yes. TikTok at What's the Deal? LinkedIn, the Norfus Firm, the www. You don't even have to do that anymore. That was really old school. The norfusfirm.com. Find us and tell us what you want to hear. Give us reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Here it is. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and leadership. That's the deal when you know what you're dealing with.